Hello, everyone. It is episode 13 of the Above and Below podcast. I am one of the co-founders, Cam Ayala. I am the above and below. And my co-host,
I'm James Dixon. I'm the below the knee, the one with the good hair.
all right. Guys, we're just going to jump right into today's conversation because today's guest has an incredible story. Well, all of our guests do, but this is my first time hearing the story directly from this gentleman. And Mark, how do you pronounce your last name? Because I was practicing before we hit record and I have butchered it myself.
Yeah, everybody does. It's Fucarile.
Oh, I
Fucarile.
had it perfect. I did it. I had it right.
And that's one you don't want to mess up because when I was practicing, I dropped a couple of F-bombs. But anyway, this is a faith-based podcast, so we'll keep it clean. But when I was on Instagram last year, so just like a month ago, and I tend to follow the amputee or amputation hashtag, and I came across a post from Mark and saw that we had some mutual friends and followers in common. And I was like, wow, I've always wanted to connect with somebody who was at blank. And I'm not going to steal his thunder. I'll let him tell his story because it's really fascinating. They've had a bunch of different Hollywood films made from that event that forever changed his life. And we want to hear it directly from Mark. So, Mark, welcome to the podcast. Tell everyone where you're from, about how old you are, and then jump right into your journey.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. If you can't tell by my accent, I'm
You're from Boston.
the Boston, right? I mean, Boston Strong should tell you a little bit about who I am, where I'm from. So yeah, I'm 45. I became an amputee at 35, just over 10 years ago. Boston Marathon bombing 2013, April 15th, the day I'll never forget.
But you said you're from Worcester. Is that right? Is that right?
Worcester.
Watch it. Oh, my.
You're from Austin, Massachusetts. Very cool.
Boston, right outside the city.
Yes,
My cousin
sir.
Mark from Boston.
Yes. Yeah. Well, so tell us about that day, Mark, because again, I specifically did not watch any of your videos on your website or on your socials because I wanted to hear what your journey was. Like, for example, were you there running the marathon? Were you there cheering loved ones on? Were you just a passerby? Let's go back to that day and share as much as you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, no, I share it all the time. So the Boston Marathon is ran on a Monday, Patriots Day. So Sunday, after I just finished my real estate classes, I got a phone call from a friend of mine. And he said, "Hey, we're going to the marathon." And I said, "Yep, I'm not going. I've, 35 years living right outside the city. I've never gone to the marathon." And his reply was, "Hey, Mike J's running, Mike Jefferson. He's a friend of ours that we grew up through high school with. And I actually worked with him. And, when he used to go on deployment, we would take him out and party to get his mind off it when he came home. We actually drove down to North Carolina to Camp Lejeune, picked him up, took him to Myrtle Beach, partied, dropped him back off in worse shape than he left." Let's just say we had some incidents. And yeah, so right when he told me that Mike J was running, I mean, I have family in the military. I love our, military veterans. I love supporting them, so when I found out he was running in honor of soldiers he served with, and I, of course, was like, "Yep, gotta go support my friend, gotta go support a veteran." And a group of us went down to the marathon that day, Monday, early, late morning, early afternoon. We got into our position in front of the Forum restaurant, and we were there waiting for Mike J to come across, run down Boylston Street. We're right there on Boylston Street. And while we were waiting, we checked the app and found out that he was, further away. So we had some time. So we were trying to figure out where we were going to go eat and grab a bite while we were waiting for him. And that's when the first bomb went off. Bang. We all looked left towards the finish line, and it was massive, man. It was the biggest biggest explosion I've ever seen, personally.
Oh, so you saw the explosion. You didn't just hear it. You
Wow.
Yeah, the smoke, the fire, like the debris. It was as tall as the buildings, man. It was crazy. And, you know, my buddy turned to me, goes, "Oh my God, you know, what was that?" I'm like, "I don't know, but I'll tell you, it's not good." You know, like those people are going to need help. And, you know, it was 300 yards away from us, you know, so it was a distance down the road. And then 12 seconds later, boom, the second bomb went off. And I woke up looking at the sky and just the gray cloud smoke, screaming, yelling. My ears were ringing. I was on my back, and I just knew. I'm like, damn, they got me too. Right. Whatever just happened down that street just happened right where I was standing. And just fighting to regain consciousness and get my bearings of where I was trying to get up, and I couldn't get up. My leg was amputated instantly through the knee. It was, yeah, it was, my body felt nothing though. I felt no pain. I just knew it was a mess. It was chaos because you could hear it. And,
To
you
be
know,
a
I
victim
was
of terrorism at home changed everything for you.
in
And the
the
fact
blink of
that
an
you
eye.
didn't feel that pain, but you know, what was like the immediate thing that took place after that? Do you recall, like, you recall being in the hospital, or did you wake up there on the street?
I was awake. I was in and out of consciousness the whole time, laying there on the street. And people were talking to me, and they were trying to keep me awake. And, you know, and they were asking me my name, where I was from, you know, and I was like, "Listen, I just want to get home to my kid. I just want to see my boy. I just want to see my boy. I just want to see my boy." Like, "How old's your boy?" And I was like, "He's 5." And they're like, "Yeah, we're going to get you there. We're going to get you there." And they were talking to me through it. "Just stay awake, stay with us, keep talking." And, you know, one of the guys like, "Hey, we're going to get you. We got you. We're going to get you an ambulance. There's an ambulance coming right now." And he's like, "Stop, stop." You could hear him yelling. And he's like, "Why ain't they stopping?" And people are like, "They're full, they're full." And he did that twice. And he said, "Hey, I promise I won't tell you we have one until we know we have one." And they were calling in on the radio. And they said, and all I remember hearing real quickly was 16 minutes. They ain't going to make 16 minutes. And I'm like, now they already had me in a headboard. The fire department ran down from the fire station. They had me on a backboard. They had me in a neck brace. And
Had a
they moved me
tourniquet
like, "Hey,
on your residual
oh."
limb, all that, I'm sure.
So there was a young lady, off-duty nurse, Kayla Quinn, okay, and she stepped over me because she thought when I was unconscious that I was already had passed. And she was trying to help Lindsay Lou, 21-year-old foreign exchange student that was bleeding out. Her leg was filleted. She ended up passing due to her injuries. And there were so many people trying to help. And this is a huge thing people miss about the marathon. Like all the people that came to that scene to help, right? Put themselves at danger, not knowing if there was more bombs or what was going on. So Kayla Quinn stepped over me to help Lindsay Lou, and then she realized she couldn't get in there. So she stepped back, and that's when I kind of tried to sit up, and she was like, "Whoa, stay down," you know, because keep the, you know, heart below the wound. And she strapped that tourniquet on me, and she, you know, she saved my life. And then they ended up, so when they said 16 minutes, there was a Boston police officer, Jimmy Davis, happened to be there. And he's like, "They're not," he's like, "I could take them. I could put them in my paddy wagon." Like, "How many can you take?" And I could hear all this going on. And he's like, "I don't know, 2." And they're like, "All right, him and her." And then that's when I got picked up. And they ended up moving me and Roseanne Sodoya, who is also now above the knee right leg amputee. And they moved me and her into the paddy wagon, and they took us off in the paddy wagon, got us to the hospital because there was no more ambulance. They weren't sending any more ambulances because they were looking for other bombs. So my other 2 friends well, there was 8 of us there, and 6 of us, 3 of us lost our leg that day. Me, JP, and Paul all lost the right leg. Me and Paul lost above the knee, and JP lost below the knee. So on the ambulance ride, you know, I was awake in and out of consciousness on the paddy wagon ride. And the last thing I remember was the doors opening and just seeing people at the dock. And that was it. And next thing you know, I woke up days later in the hospital, missing my right leg and going in and out of surgery in my left leg. The pain was so bad that they had to do an epidural for days. They left the epidural in as long as they could, take it out, put a new one in, took it out, put a new one in. But I was in a Mass General Hospital for 45 days. I was on the burn unit. 80% of my lower half of my body was burnt. I have shrapnel in my heart, and my body's covered in, BBs, nails, zippers, anything that they could put in that bomb to hurt people, they had put in there. And it's all throughout my body, livid. And they don't take it out because, it's not something to do. They leave them in there and let your body encapsulate them. Hopefully you don't get infections.
So you still have a lot of that shrapnel or the debris in your body.
All over it. I have x-rays where we can connect the dots, la, la, la,
Yeah.
do the Big Dipper,
Yeah. Wow.
You know what? That day forever changed your life. I see the flags of valor behind you, but real valor is what just hearing you go off and mention whether it's Lindsay Lou or any of the other names, man. It's
Martin Richard, 8-year-old boy that passed away right next to me.
yeah. And the fact that you let those names continue to be said, that's
I share
awesome.
them all the time.
So Mark, and we're gonna dive a little bit into your recovery and ultimately your faith journey and all of this. So my question is, when that first bomb went off, um, you mentioned you and your buddies, you saw it, and were you guys like kind of like everyone else, almost trying to be first responders and run towards it to see, or did you not have enough reaction time, and then the second bomb went off and you were a casualty of that?
Yeah, there just wasn't enough time. I mean, I'd like to believe I'd go down and try to help, but honestly, it was just caught off guard, right?
Hmm.
Like, whoa, what's going on? And then by the time you could figure out what was happening, I was already on my back.
Yeah. Okay. So it's
And we were
pretty
far,
quickly
far
after.
away. Yeah, we were far away. I mean, I definitely would have, if there was people hurt next to me, and I was able to help, I definitely would have, because it's just my nature. It's what I always want to do. That's why I was starting a nonprofit. That's why I was leaving my career, going into real estate to run a nonprofit that I was building with the Boys and Girls Club of America at the time.
So, Mark, if you could, let's then go back to, because one of the things you were saying as you're kind of coming to in and out of consciousness, I want to go home to my boy, I want to go home to my boy. When was the first time post explosion that you were able to see your son? And do you
2 weeks.
remember what that felt like?
Uh, Man, 2 weeks. Took 2 weeks to get him in there. So in my situation, me and my son were 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, pretty much, except for when I was at work and I had him in, preschool. But my life was me and my son every day. I woke him up, fed him, boom, dropped him off at daycare, picked him up from daycare after work, fed him dinner, put him to bed. His mother was a nurse and she worked the overnight shift. So she was sleeping and then, waking, it was a lot of passing in the nights. But me and my son's life, my son was my life. He was my world. He was every day and he didn't know where I went, and, unfortunately it's really, really caused, a tough road for me and my son in our relationship, and for him with his anxiety and stuff.
Mm,
Mm.
But
So,
we're
he
using our
saw you
faith to get
again
through
though.
it.
Yeah. And and regardless if you have limb loss or you're a cancer survivor, or you're just someone, your son, how old's your son now? Probably
He's
what,
16 now.
16. That's a hormonal anxiety filled age to begin with, and especially post pandemic, right? Up there he is. Well, not 16 there, but looks like that's where it was shortly after your incident. But what I found in my own faith journey is, one of my favorite mantras is faith over fear. And fear and anxiety are so closely related. And so when there is a deficit of faith, there is an increase of fear, right? And I've talked about that in other conversations. So let's go to your faith journey, Mark, because when something as tragic as, what happened to you goes down, where were you in your faith journey at that point in time, and did it bring you closer to God or further away? Let's maybe talk through that part of your journey, if you wouldn't mind.
I really, I was in a hectic stage of my life at that moment in that time. And God had always been more on the back end, in the back burner. My faith was always on the back end, wasn't always too sure where I stood with that. And again, it took me years and years to really find my faith and really feel how God saved me that day. So I was I just seen the generosity and the kindness after seeing that, two people do just pure evil, right? Two evil people performing a heinous act, detonate a bomb in just a crowd of people, two of them. And then I saw the generosity and kindness. So when I woke up, you would think I would be so mad, so upset. Man, I was just so grateful and so feeling so blessed that just to be alive. Like that's all. I just could see my son again. I didn't care if I was missing all my limbs. As long as I could see my boy, I was happy. And then to find all the support that we were receiving from complete strangers, people we had never met us, never knew who we were, just really turned a negative into a positive. And I'm like, how can you be mad at that? So in that moment, I just was grateful, right? And I didn't understand why I was just so grateful. And everybody's like, how are you so angry? I'm like, of course I'm angry. Of course I'm mad. These cowards did this to innocent people, killed an innocent young girl, young boy, another girl, two police officers. I'm like, just doesn't make sense, but it will all make sense. I felt and now it all has to me as I found my faith. And over time, recovering 3.5 years of recovery, I had 5 revisions on my right leg. I've had 20, 30 surgeries on my left foot to save it. It's been a process, and in my faith came much later on. And I met my wife, Nicole Browder, from Texas. She comes from a big Christian family. And right before I met her, I started realizing and seeing some of the people that were around me in my network as it grew, as I've done 8 marathons, and who were around me and these celebrity softball games I do down in Texas, and who God had started putting in my life. And as I reflected on all my, major events that changed the direction of my life, I feel was God. And I can look back and see it as clear as day. When my son was born and how my son, was born, it was at that specific time in my life, what I was doing and how it changed the direction of my life to a positive. That as the marathon, where I was in my life, and then how he changed my direction, that incident changed my direction in life, closer and closer to God. And then it's just as much as purchasing the house in Texas that we just purchased in 2021 was we were dealing with a realtor, and I was putting bids 100 grand, 100,000 over asking price on my house in Texas. And I'm like, wait, what am I doing? This isn't where I'm supposed to be. And I was losing these bids. And I believe that God didn't grant me that victory on purchasing that house because I was outbidding where I wanted to be financially and putting my family at risk. And then once we found this new realtor, and he happened to be a Christian and holds Bible study and book study, and didn't even know this. And the first bid, I put 15% under asking in 2021 when everybody was paying over. And he said, Mark, I just want you to be prepared that you won't get this house. And I said, don't worry about it. I believe I'll get it. I said, if it's meant to be, it'll be. He's like, well, me and my wife will say a prayer for you tonight. He called me back the next day, said, you got the house. He's like, I've never seen anything like this. And I said, well, I just 100% already knew because I just had this feeling, and God provided that for us. And that's, if you reflect like I can reflect on my life and everything. It's so obvious and it's so undeniable that God has taken a part in every part of it. So that's where my faith changed.
I'm sure you're like Cam and I. You look back over your life, and you know that there's always that famous thing about footprints in the sand. And I never really felt like it applied to me because, of course, I don't leave 2 footprints, right?
Right. None of us do.
And people are like, hey, those are the marks where God carried you. But the truth is, man, it is the invisible steps of God in your life that led you to that point. And when we look back over our lives, all 3 of us, though we share the limb loss, we share a deeper vein. That's the faith. And the fact that we were all brought to the same cross to realize that he had a plan that included what we went through. Mark, you mentioned, how old were you? Like, how old are you now?
I'm 45 now. I was 35 at the time.
No. Yeah, that, no, Cam acts like that's old. He's always stripping,
I'm 35 now, so.
I know, but Cam does, he uses Clairol number 7 to dry out the white. Listen, you, Mark, as you have continue to share your faith. And you've come full circle from tragedy, triumph, to being able to be the trumpet of God to tell people about your journey. Man, I mean, how fulfilling is life today as compared to when you were 34 before all the incidents happened?
Oh, listen, you the only people that can understand it are at the same place that I'm at, the joy that it is. Like, if you're not where we are, like, you can't even comprehend the joy that it brings to your life. Like, I fear nothing. I fear absolutely nothing. I believe that it's all going to be the way it's going to be, and he's going to take care of it all, and we're all going to a better place. So I literally fear nothing in life, and it's such a freeing sensation to have that power, to have those no worries, because I know it's all going to work out, and it's all going to be by the plan that he has. And it's so fulfilling, and so it's amazing. It's literally a high that you could never get from a drug ever in life.
You know, Mark, as I hear you say that, I really will pray that prayer, the freedom that you feel right now, that your son will feel that too, you know, with his anxiety,
We're getting him there.
because it's all very possible to be cleared of that anxiety. I mean, it's spiritual warfare. The enemy wants to come in. He wants to start putting doubts and insecurities in our mind, and it's so perpetuated in social media and the regular media and the world and the time that we're living in now. It takes bold men of God like you to lead by example and to tell him the only thing we have to fear is God, but it's a loving God, and all the other things of this world do not matter. And the thing that was otherwise seen as a tragedy and one of the worst days of your life has now catapulted you into walking in purpose in this stronger relationship with Christ. And if you can get through that, like, you can get through anything, and
Oh,
you're the
come on, you
testament of
can't.
that. You're the
Yeah.
testament of that, Mark. And so now let's talk about how you know, you're giving back to the community. Let's talk a little bit about the MARC Network and that resource that can be for people going through limb loss.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it'll all include what we talk, the concept about turning over prosthetics and prosthetists, and
Mm-hmm.
being that squeaky wheel to get that grease. We have to advocate for ourselves, right? It took me 3.5 years to get into the right socket that I'm in now, right? And I've gone through 4 prosthetists, and I loved every prosthetist that I've gone to, and they
And
all did
real
great
quick,
by me.
so James, you've been an amputee since you're 11. How many prosthetists have you had in your journey?
Wow. Well, I don't think I'm on my 4th one yet, you know, but I should have been, but I trusted him. When he pointed out, he's like, man, you got this likable guy, Cam, you know how this is, man. Imagine you meet a guy and you're a kid, and he's just, you just trust him like a teacher, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, it's what you know. And then they take advantage of you. Because nice person, but you have to realize, when I say take advantage, they're like morticians. They know what face to put on when every time a customer comes in. They know how to be empathetic and be like, but they also know how to go in there and cash out on insurance to make sure they maxed out, got all the money, and then they're gone, right? And so then you find out later someone else does a better job. And you're like, why in the world didn't you tell me about that? Well, I got a spiff by putting you in this one, so I made more money. And then you find another one who's like, listen, I'm going to upgrade the quality of your leg. I don't know if you know anything, either one of you know what. I started off, man, they gave me a leg that was so antiquated that it literally could have been used on a mannequin. It was a rubber foot. It was a satch foot, if you've heard of those phrases. They were just the lowest level prosthetics. And there's never been a time in my life where I wasn't K4. But they put me in those because it was the highest profit margin. They wrap it around and put skin tone around it, and so that you can't see what's under the engine. And then when you find out, you're like, man, you limited me.
I've been
Fighting
in
for
that
your friend,
situation.
everything, you know. Cam
I was
fights. Yeah, he don't act all sweet over there, Cam.
No,
Cam is like,
well, I'm a year and a half post amputation. Now I am on my fourth prosthetist. So
yeah,
I shop around because I'm not loyal to anybody but God and to my own well-being. And that's what I encourage every patient here. You have to advocate for yourself.
right.
And there are advocate groups. Reach out to James, reach out to me, reach out to Mark,
Yep.
and we'll help you as best we can. I mean, we're not going to do your insurance verification for you, but we'll just give you tips and tricks. And so, with that, Mark, tell them a little bit about the MARC Network and how your journey has kind of led you to starting that.
So just, just like James was saying, I got taken advantage of in getting a wheelchair because I was no weight bearing for many months after the bombing because of my left foot. And the guy sold me the most profitable wheelchair, not the best wheelchair. Right. So it's just out there. It just happens. And all four of my prosthetists made unbelievable sockets. And that just at some point, I had geolocation. I moved, right? I had to go down to Walter Reed. So that's where my treatment was. And I met this guy. And he's like, oh my God, he made a great socket. And then after making me 2 great sockets, he couldn't get me fitted again. We did 6 sockets and he couldn't get a good fit. So I went to his boss and his boss got me a good fit. Then his boss couldn't get me a fit. So I went to another one of their guys. He got me fitted. It's just, and again, they can make a great socket 3 times and then 2 times in a row, they can't. And it's not their fault. They just might need a third, but you gotta limit yourself to being on your downtime. So what I created was the MARC Network, Mobility Awareness Resource Community. So community of people all facing the similar challenge of mobility. If you're an amputee, spinal cord injury, MS, CP, stroke survivor, any kind of disability, being blind, anything that affects your mobility. So it's a social media platform, but it's really a community platform where people can engage, communicate, ask each other questions, geomap location to find out like, hey, my prosthetic broke and I'm in Dallas. Well, where do I go to get it fixed? Geomap location, search prosthetics, boom, boom, boom. Ask the community, say, hey, I'm in Dallas on a chat group for prosthetics or prosthetists or physical and occupational therapists. And you're chatting with them and say, hey, I'm in Dallas. Anybody got anybody in Dallas to help me with my X3 charger? Yeah, I do. I got one. Meet you there. So it's also about events. I got an event calendar for any event that pertains to mobility, like the Abilities Expo, Camp No Limits, which is for kids with missing limbs and limb differences across the US. They host like 17 camps, summer camps, a ski camp. It's like mentorship program. We're partnering with other nonprofit organizations and other companies that do advocacy that come to the hospital to visit new amputees and explain to them, hey, this is the process. Be careful of this, this, and this. Do your research. This one woman, she has 42 volunteers across the US that will go visit people in hospital. They're certified.
Is that with the
mentors.
Amputee Coalition?
Nope, it's another. No, it's a woman out of New Hampshire, out of Nashua, New Hampshire.
Peggy? No. No. I thought
I'm sorry. Yeah,
He's making an amputee joke, Peggy. Yeah, you gotta watch James.
Yeah, no,
I see who James is. Hey, listen.
Don't be that guy.
No, it's
My
Eileen.
shirt-
It's Eileen. That's who it is.
Eileen. So I have a shirt that says "On My Last Leg."
Yeah.
Or like
Yeah.
literally,
Yep.
literally.
Yep.
And then my next shirt's "One Foot in the Grave." Right.
Yep.
I mean, that's the next one. So my wife was also born with no arm. My wife Nicole Browder, she was born with no arms and no legs.
So she's quad.
Yeah. So she has a short leg with a little foot with 3 toes on it. So, but she's considered a quadruple. Yeah. Congenital. That's what she's considered.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, she graduated Texas A&M, right? So I mean,
that a girl. That's the best thing I heard all day. Woo!
Man, yeah, hey, that's good stuff, man. Man, listen, you go down to Texas and you pick one out. That's Cam. You'll get you one, man.
Yeah. And Mark, because we could have a whole episode, because we have about 7 minutes left, but we could have a whole episode on like dating and marriage with limb loss and limb difference. And that was actually one of the things, and this is actually a good segue. I was going to ask you with meeting your now wife, and obviously that was post bombing incident with you. So you are now an amputee. And I know for newer amputees, and it's not just, subjected to men, it's women too, it's anybody. You can go
Yeah.
through insecurities, body dysmorphia, all that. And I actually just wrote an article in the Living with Amplitude, and I talk a lot about that. So maybe from your experience, and now obviously now that I know that your wife is someone with limb difference, it was probably a lot easier because she kind of can give you sympathy and empathy, but maybe talk through what that dating journey or getting back out there was like for you post amputation, and how you ultimately netted out where you are now with your wife.
Yeah, it's always a concern. With anything, with everybody, it's always a concern. If it's, physical, financial, you know,
Mhm.
color, race, and it's always who what you're trying to do. There's always challenges with dating, right? Everybody has their insecurities and different things. For me, listen, I don't see nothing. Like, I see no difference, right? Like, my grandfather married out of religion, right? And that was his choice, and that was him, and he goes, I don't love her religion, I love her, right? And his family disowned him. He was Italian Catholic, and he was like, whatever, you know. Um, so he in my family, like, I my dating board was a smorgasbord of people from every walk of life. And so when I became an amputee, to me, it didn't even
Right.
exist.
But when did you get the confidence again to go ahead and start approaching people?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that,
Uh,
that that confidence had to take a dip from the 34-year-old
yeah,
that was
dancing.
swagger. Yeah.
I was a hustler. Like I said, I did nightclub promotions, hip hop, R&B, reggae, DJs. I love to dance. That's one thing I do miss, because my left leg does limit me in dancing. My right
Oh
leg.
yeah, Cam was a rapper at one time.
Yeah. So no, I mean, it's my wife wants to do a Dating with Disabilities TV show, and that's going to be probably a part of the MARC Network eventually down the line in the future. Once we
Mm-hmm.
grow the community, I have
Mm-hmm.
production teams and stuff that I've been building and working on, and connections. Um,
Oh, that's
but
great.
yeah, so I mean, it's
Well, and how did you meet your now wife?
through social media, through a woman. So I did a Halo for Freedom down in Fort Worth and Dallas, Texas area with Dana
Uh-huh.
Bowman. He was a double amputee,
Uh-huh.
um, combat vet. So he hosted what was called Halo for Freedom, a weekend to remember for veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like hog hunting out of a helicopter, skydiving, nighttime bow fishing. So I got an invite down there to come talk to the veterans and some of the amputee. And, he invited me down to be a part of it. And they loved me and they liked me. So they brought me back for a second year. That's all you get is 2 years. You get 1 year. If they really like it, they bring you back for a second year, then that's it.
Yeah.
So I got to meet some of the volunteers and some of the sponsored people that sponsored it. And I developed a relationship with a few of the people that I stayed connected with. And one of them reached out to me about my now wife and was like, hey, I got this girl. She has no arms and no legs. I want to help her. You're just always a great resource for information. Could you give me some information to help her? And I see that you mentor kids with missing limbs and limb differences. I think she would be a great mentor and a great inspiration to these kids to show them that they could do all these things that she has accomplished. I said, yeah, here's a link to the website. Tell her to check it out. She can just volunteer through the website. And that's how the conversation started. And then months go by and we were following each other on Instagram just because I
Mm-hmm.
was searching people with disabilities to
Yeah.
find
Yeah. Yeah.
products
Yeah.
and find information. And that's how we got to meet. And then she mentioned she didn't really want to be a volunteer at the program because she had already done camp. My wife's more of a shyer, introvert, quieter
Yeah.
person. So she was like, oh, I'm kind of shy. I don't want to really do that. And, but she was like, I do like that skiing. I've never been skiing before. Like, well, how do you do that? So I was like, oh, I love skiing. I think everybody should ski. I actually skied before I walked.
Oh,
Right.
wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So I believe, and I felt so free, and I felt like I was standing up because I was born scared being up from New England,
Right.
the
Right.
Northeast. And that's how trying to convince her to come up. And I happen to have a celebrity softball game down in Texas. And I was like, hey, come there and meet this other family, Memphis Lafferty and his father, Chris. They come skiing. He's a quadruple amputee. I said, you'll get to meet them, develop a friendship with them, and you guys could come up and you could know people and you'll feel safe and comfortable with people. And I was able to get her to come out to that celebrity softball game with like Matthew McConaughey, Toby Keith, and all them, and Roger
Wow.
Clemens. And, so we had her up there, and it was just instant. Like I couldn't deny the energy. And then it was just, she's just beautiful. She's just a great person, big heart, and that's how we developed talking to keep her engaged, to get
Mm-hmm.
her all the information she needed to go skiing. And it just, one thing turned into another thing. Like we just had a lot in common. We just, it was really cool talking to her. And I mean, I had other, things going on in my life, but she was just that calming piece to my life. And I just couldn't deny the feelings that were growing. And we just, it's a long distance relationship, Boston to Austin, Texas,
Yeah, yeah. Boston to
we made it work.
Austin made it work. Yeah. So, Mark, we have about a minute and a half left. In our last minute and a half, as we like to do, um, what is one or two Bible verses, or maybe people in the Bible that really resonated with you on your journey as an amputee that you'd like to close out with?
The Psalms 23:4, even through the walk, I walk through the darkness, the valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. That's the one. Like I literally fear no evil.
Mhm.
We have nothing to fear, even though we may feel overwhelmed at times. And what I'm creating with this app, it's a free app, MARC Network 2.0. You can download it from
And
Apple
we'll
and
have the
Google.
links in the show notes for sure.
Yeah, and it's a lot of work, man, trying to get sponsorship, trying to get people to join and be confident in it. And I'm 100% okay with it. Like because of him, I really don't, you know, it's just I don't have anything to fear. Like I don't feel life, I don't feel getting hurt, I don't feel anybody hurting me. Like I'm okay and trust everything. When you're faced with danger in life, they say the Lord will, rescue you in a miraculous way, and I
Amen.
believe that. And he did that for me. Like, during that time, he saved me and brought me back up. And now he's provided that future for me, and I think, that comes from, I think it's the Jeremiah 29:11, I think.